Good evening, everybody. So today I'm going to show you an application of a UAV system to monitor the geomorphic evolution of a coastal dune. So I am a researcher of the University of Ferrara. I am a coastal geomorphologist. So compared to the other presentation we have before, this is not so technical into the UAV system, but we use the UAV system just to detect the geomorphic evolution of this landform. As you probably know, the UAV system has dramatically increased their use in the last years in every kind of environment, and among this environment there is also, of course, the coastal environment. As far as I know, for the Italian legislation, there are two types of licenses. It depends on the weight of your drone. So there are light drone with a weight underneath 2.5 kilos, if I'm not wrong, and another license for heavier drones. And as far as I know, in the US, for example, until 2 years ago, for research purposes, there were no less limitation than in Italy, for example. The study site is Punta Marina, is a small seaside close to Ravenna city. We are in Emilia-Romagna, in the northern Adriatic Sea, and we monitored the evolution in 1 year of this natural coastal dune. The study site, for a climate point of view, has a semi-diurnal tide regime, which means that we have two types of tides, and the maximum tidal range at spring tide is about 70-80 centimeter. The storm direction, as in the whole Adriatic, is our two direction, from northeast with the Bora winds and from southeast with the Scirocco. And the typical wave height is about 0.2-0.5 meter. So this is just to make you aware about the hydrodynamic condition of the area. These coastal dunes, since we are in Emilia-Romagna and in Italy, you know that the coastal environment is really urbanized. It's full of beach resort, infrastructure, hotels, and so on. So when we have small natural dunes, small natural landform, we now understand that we have to protect them. And in fact, in 2015, this area was underwent to an experimental project for the safeguard of this dune. There were some works with the municipality of Ravenna and the Italian oil company Eni, and they tried to protect this dune, constructing some elevated wooden walkways in order to concentrate the walking of people in this path. And they construct also a wooden fence in front of the forest dune to protect the dune and to trying to catch more sediments. Furthermore, the year later, in 2016, the University of Bologna planted more than 5,000 plants of coastal dune plants of 3 species, the typical species of this area, in order to generate an incipient dune and to let it grow through the time, trying to catch more sediments under the wind action. So going to the methodology, we used an off-the-shelf Phantom DJI drone with a normal digital camera of 12 megapixel. To plan the mission, we used the drone deploy application, and the day before every survey we planned the flight, shaping the area to cover. The elevation, we use always more or less 80 meters of flight altitude, and a percentage of side lap and front lap more than 17%. We use on the ground, on the dune surface, 20 ground control points for each survey, which are wooden square 60 for 60 centimeter size, white and red, and we measured the cross with an RTK GPS. And we did 4 surveys during 1 year, from March 2017 to last April. Then we used the structure for motion algorithm of Agisoft photoscan software to produce the typical products, so digital surface model and orthomosaics. And then we did some analysis in ArcGIS. So we firstly discriminate creating a mask of the incipient dune. The incipient dune, if you don't know, is the active part of a coastal dune, so is the part fronting the stabilized and vegetated area of the dune, is the part closer to the shoreline, which is continuously developing under the wind action. So we choose to limit this mask with a landward limit, which is the line discriminating from the stabilized dune and the active sediment, the active sand, moving sand. And as seaward limit, we use a buffer distance from the wooden fence. Then we reshaped this mask, checking from all the orthophotos and the digital elevation models, trying to avoid the biggest shadows we had in some surveys, and also to avoid the artificial displacement of sediments. We are in a very touristic place, so there are a lot of beach resorts in this area. So during winter, all the landlord of the facilities build an artificial dune to protect the building from the winter storms. So, for example, this kind of landform, we choose to avoid this landform from the incipient mask. Then we retrieve data, the climate data from the nearby gauges. We retrieve sea level data from the tide gauge of Porto Garibaldi, which is just 20 kilometers northward from the study site. We retrieve the wind data from Ravenna station, and we retrieved also wave data from the offshore wave buoy of Cesenatico from ARPA Emilia-Romagna. Then we also classified the storm occurred in this period with a classification of Mendoza, which is a famous classification to classify storm energy in the Mediterranean context. These are some results from the drone processing. You have some data about the flight, and you can see that the ground control point, the error on the location of ground control point for each survey was less than 10 centimeters. Then we add, of course, different digital elevation and orthomosaic resolution, and we choose to export orthomosaic and digital elevation model of 5 centimeters, and we use them to work. We did also a validation between the RTK measurement and the digital elevation model in the elevation value. And according to the root mean square error, we always add an error less than 10 centimeters. Of course, the worst value were in the more vegetated area of the dune or close to the sea surface. According to the wind action, during this period, we saw that the most powerful period was the first one, between the first and the second survey. We had more wind in that period and with an advantageous direction for the dune growth. You can see the majority of the wind came from southeast. Here, imagine you have your dune, so is an advantageous direction for the elevation growth of the dune. And we also monitored the storm occurred in this period. We had 13 storms with very weak energy. you can see that from the classification we have just weak or moderate storm. And the green line is the water level we recorded. So always under 1 meter. And if you consider the dune is 1.2, 1.3 meter above sea level. All these values in meter are above mean sea level. And now we're going to check the geomorphic evolution of the area. So this is a dam of difference between the first and the second survey. In this period we have the more visible changes. I divided the whole area of the incipient dune in the north and the south zone. In the north zone you have a little bit of light blue area here, so it means an accretion, a deposition of sediment. A little bit of erosion in the central part of the northern zone, which is also the narrowest part of the incipient dune, and a great deposition of sediment, a growth of the incipient dune in the southern zone, which is increasing going south. Remember that the range of erosion and deposition of sediment goes from minus half meter plus half meter, so it's just 1 meter of range. From the second to the third survey, we had less modification of the geomorphology with some of a little bit of erosion on the whole area, and you can see just some light blue area here in the southern part of the region. And from the third to the last survey, again we had less modification with a light blue area here, if you notice, is closer to the landward limit, so is closer to the stabilized dune. You can see this better from this slide. You can see the profile evolution. The black line is the first survey, the blue line is the last one. You see that there was an increase in elevation, more limited in the northern zone. If you go southward, you see an increase in elevation of the incipient dune, and if you look at the southern zone, it's very interesting to see not only the increase in elevation, but also a landward migration of the sediment accumulation. So that means that the incipient dune became larger, higher and larger, and closer to the stabilized dune, which is landward. Of course, as I told you, there is vegetation in this area, which is an influence factor. We try to estimate how much the vegetation overestimates the volume calculation. We did two masks, one with and one without the vegetation, and we found out that the difference was just in this little portion of about 30 meters, so more or less is 1 truck of sand and a half. So the vegetation overestimates the volume for 11%, we found. This is the annual variation. You can see that the first period was the most significant, and the last image is about the cumulative geomorphic changes. You can see the enlargement of the incipient dune and a landward migration. And you can see that the volume increase was mainly during the first part, then a little decrease, and then became stable till the end. So concluding, we detect, thanks to an off-the-shelf UAV system, a volume increase of the incipient dune, which was on the overall of about more than 200 cubic meter, especially in the first period. And also we detect a landward migration of the incipient dune crest, which is very important for the dune stabilization and the dune protection, because an enlargement and a growth in elevation of the incipient dune will protect better the stabilized dune behind it, and there are also chances that this incipient dune will transform in a stabilized dune in the future. Of course, if mild storm condition will last again also for the future months and years. we also showed how cheap and off-the-shelf UAV can be adopted to monitor short-term displacement, short-term geomorphic changes with a satisfactory accuracy. And of course, the vegetation overestimates the volume calculation, but not significantly. And in any case, the vegetation is the key factor in this kind of process, because this kind of plant, with their roots and with their leaves, they can trap sediments, more sediments, and they can stabilize the deposition of sediments. So including the vegetation in the volume calculation, according to us, makes sense. Thank you.
Is there any specific question for Edoardo Grottoli in this presentation? Yes, please.
I'm very positively surprised with the results.
Can you please speak to the mic?
I'm very positive surprised with the results you presented, because typically the algorithm, structure for motion algorithms, they show some problems on amorphic surfaces, like white surface of sand or concrete or roof of the house. So did you get some artifacts on your models, DSM models? Did you filter it, or you just take it? You just take it.
Yeah, I said that we just take it as it was, and anyway, we just focused on some specific area of interest, so an area without too many vegetation, and of course within the ground control point network. So every area outside this network was not analyzed. Anyway, we still find a good, reliable data from.
Very nice reference. Could be terrestrial scan.
Of course, yeah.
Not huge.
Yeah, of course. In a few time to buy a laser scanner.
Any other questions? So, just to sum up, I think that we have seen, as expected, heterogeneous applications, and it was interesting to see the fact that the regulation may impact somehow on, at least on the setup of the case studies and the test site that you would like to carry out. And it would be interesting also to take this into consideration if we would like to turn this test into some operational service. I was impressed by the use of different types of sensor rather than just optical sensor. This is quite interesting. I think this will be challenging in the future, especially if we want to meet maybe some weight regulation constraints in order to fly in a critical condition in urban areas and so on. So a threshold between miniaturization and weight control versus the accuracy of those sensors. I would like to thank all the presenters for the time they spent in preparing the presentations and for keeping the time and meeting the 15 minutes constraint. Thanks a lot, and of course thanks to the audience for being with us this afternoon. Thanks a lot.